The White House going the extra mile to protect the oldest president in history, while the Democrats unleash on his biggest rival. Politico reporting Biden downplays age talk, but subtle accommodations are being made. Team Biden is secretly helping Joe avoid countless embarrassing moments, like when he stumbles up the stairs. So what's their solution? Give him shorter stairs to get on and off Air Force One. I wish I was kidding. Biden uses small steps to board every flight on his recent NATO trip. They're also making Biden change his footwear. Joe is rocking casual sneakers instead of dress shoes, which can be more prone to slipping. There is, however, one top Biden challenger who doesn't need accommodations to run for the presidency. Democrats berated and censored RFK Jr. during yesterday's government censorship hearing, and now they're defending their behavior.
What is the fear of having RFK Jr. come to the Hill to testify? What are you afraid that he would say?
I'm not afraid of anything he would say. I just don't want to hear him.
RFK Jr.'s point that he is being censored by Democrats?
I don't think you want to bring bigots before the Congress.
Trying to censor him today proved his point that he is being...
To censor him, we were trying to make sure that he didn't cause more harm with his outrageous testimony.
Oh, that's not censorship. Censorship would not be allowing someone to speak. He can speak.
And here's how you know that RFK is getting under their skin. The media is now comparing him to Trump.
Parallels between Trump and Bobby Kennedy Jr. are kind of stunning. They'll throw these grenades out and let them explode and then walk away and go, oh, I didn't do anything.
We have now opened this can of worms where kind of contrarian, eccentric candidates are running, and it was Donald Trump first in the Republican Party, and now we're seeing it in the Democratic Party.
I have not wanted to enable his access to the drug addiction that he has never conquered. The drug addiction that has been with him for all of his adult life. The addiction to attention.
I don't even know what to ask after hearing that, but Jesse, I'll start with you. Let's start with what's going on Air Force One. The Democrats have no choice to protect Biden because they know that we're not in the mood for Kamala to be the president. And so are you surprised that they stick to supporting Biden through his age concerns and trashing someone younger like RFK?
No, they hate RFK. And Biden hates RFK. Biden's always wanted to be a Kennedy, except he didn't have the money. And so he tried to get the money under the table. But remember, when he was young and was in the late 70s, early 80s, he had some hair and he was thin and athletic and he was the new guy. And he kind of aspired to be Camelot from Delaware, but he was broke. And so we got this new guy coming up who's embarrassing Joe Biden. He's getting a lot more attention. He's obviously more physically fit. And so he used his lackeys on that hearing to destroy this man with innuendo and smears. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, to say that he has caused harm, she accused him. He said this thing over the weekend about the bioweapons, and she said he had caused a rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes. That was Thursday. She's saying in 4 days, RFK's comments that maybe we played here on Fox and was online, caused people to attack Jewish people physically? She can't point to one example of that. In terms of the sneakers Joe's wearing are comfortable. The American people don't care what sneakers he wears. The American people don't care what flight of stairs he goes up in Air Force One. The American people care about the crime, the border, the high prices, and the fact that this guy's taking bribes and the entire federal bureaucracy is covering it up. That's what people care about.
You know, Katie, these Democrats are so threatened by free speech that they don't even want to give RFK an opportunity to come out and speak at a censorship hearing. And it shows how afraid they are of someone who goes against their ideology.
Well, it also is just an indictment of their broader thoughts on free speech and just giving someone the ability to say what they want to and then making a better argument about why it's wrong. I mean, they've gone from liberal philosophy to leftist philosophy, which includes censorship. And it's not just with RFK, it's with anybody who disagrees with them. We saw this throughout COVID with big tech. if you talked about Afghanistan in the wrong way, the administration would go to big tech and try to get some of that stuff censored and taken down. So that's just how they operate. They want censorship instead of a free expression of ideas and debate to win an argument. But it was really interesting yesterday during the hearing when Democratic Congressman Jerry Connolly said that RFK brings shame onto the Kennedy name. It's like, I think there's a few Kennedys in the family who probably brought some more shame on the family. Ted Kennedy comes to mind. But you're right. I mean, they're terrified of him because he's polling at 17%. But he's not a conservative. Like, he was on air yesterday with Martha saying that he agreed with the administration's bailout of student loans. I mean, he's not a conservative, and yet the media is attacking him like he is.
What's interesting, Greg, is the fact that RFK's numbers have gone down. He started at 20%, then he was, I think, 19, and now he's 17. I mean, is the Democrat machine so strong that they're telling Democrats initially inclined to favor him to, get rid of him?
It's hard to say because right now I can't measure anything because everybody's outside. But you know what bothers me? It doesn't really bother me. The accusations of an addiction to attention coming from a TV host, an occupation that is driven by the need for attention.
Whoa.
Well,
You speak for yourself,
Jesse,
Gutfeld.
you have a passion for patriotism and the country and family. And that's the only reason why you're doing this. Lawrence O'Donnell, though, never says no to a camera. I mean, he's been in movies, TV shows. He's got his own show. So even the way he was delivering that was like, I am playing a TV host. And this is incredible. But what they're doing with Joe and the stairs is reminds me of what you do to an aging parent's home. You install handrails, get rid of the slippery surfaces. He's one step away from assisted living. I think a great sitcom would be an assisted living, a reality show with people like Biden, Nadler, Pelosi, Feinstein. Just get them all in one room. It would be smelly, but it would be funny. I think the Democrats responding to RFK is the same reason why Jessica responds the same way. They see Republicans using him as a battering ram against Biden. And I think you have to admit, it's a fair suspicion because we would feel the same way if the Democrats embraced, let's say, an insurgent Republican like, say, Trump. And I do think, however, that RFK has some exceptions, and he is a liberal. But there's an overlap on speech and on vaccines. In both cases, there's the scent of fascism on the left when they're going after speech and they're demanding that you get the shots or else. And they had their way. People lost their jobs. People were trapped at home, destroyed this country for 2 years. And it was a fascist activity. So there are similarities. And it's true. He is like Trump. And you can see it from the critics' perspective. They take his words and they interpret them in the very worst way you possibly can, never mind his deeds. We know that RFK Jr., left, right, center, whatever, has done a lot of great things. He believes in it. He reads. He's a good person, right? But the longer he lasts, the deeper this animosity towards him will be, and they will continue to look at his words the way they did to Trump. And now you know this is true because they called him a bigot. And this is exactly what happened to Trump. It's like when the B word or the R word comes out, then you know they're scared of him because that's what they did to Trump. But, they got to take RFK seriously because who else you got? You got a babbling goofball as a VP. RFK says provocative stuff, but this is America, free speech. That's all he's got to say. You disagree with him, you go like, freedom of speech. Look at my deeds. And that's exactly why Trump was a good president and why people like Trump is took away the obnoxiousness of some of the things he said. The deeds were right there, and he did a good job.
Jessica, why is it that the Democrats all of a sudden have this totalitarian instinct to shut people down, to claim that what they're saying is disinformation, misinformation, or malinformation, where they admit that what Kennedy's saying is true, but it doesn't jive with their ideology? I mean, where did that come from? All of a sudden, people aren't capable of deciding issues?
No, I think so. First of all, when we're talking about the censorship, and I mentioned this yesterday, but it's important to reiterate, RFK Jr. began his statement by saying, I was censored by the Trump administration and I was censored by the Biden administration. The Hunter Biden laptop story happened in October of 2020 when Donald Trump was the president. His administration made the same kinds of requests of big tech to take things down that the Biden administration...
Yeah, we agree. The FBI is out of control.
It wasn't Trump.
Yeah, the Trump-appointed FBI director.
The FBI has been against Trump and for Biden for 6 years.
I forgot the ultimate victim.
Don't even go there.
No, just
You guys went
staying
there.
consistent with the story. We know what it was like when Trump was president. He didn't have a friend among Republicans
especially the State Department, especially the FBI.
Oh, Donald Trump, my heart breaks for you.
Well, you brought him up. Let's talk about
because
Kennedy.
it's relevant.
Let's talk about why the Democrats won't let this guy speak.
Your guys' boyfriend, RFK Jr. So first of all, he's polling at 14%, not 17%. The reason it's going down is people are hearing him, and they don't like what he has to say because he has no agenda that speaks to the Democratic Party and our values. He wants to talk about being anti-vax, which is not what we think. He wants to do videos at the border, and I think the border is an important issue. But you know what I want to hear him talk about? Talk about your work as an environmental lawyer. Talk about what's going on with climate change. I want to talk.
He did.
No, lead with it. Have a set of economic policies.
It's also 17%.
Also,
by the way.
and I get it.
17%.
Maybe I think it was 14
it's
yesterday.
Fox News polling.
The graphic I saw
17%.
Fox today said 17.
Okay. Well, I certainly believe in the veracity of the Fox
Apology
poll.
accepted,
Oh, you want to take it down?
Anyway, he's polling at like 0.4% in New York. Obviously, the guy's going nowhere.
But then why are you so scared?
I'm not scared. I'm honestly not scared. And I wouldn't call him a bigot either.
True.
But pushing him when you have the opportunity to get at someone to talk about their anti-vax opinions, the fact that they have been inconsistent on this, quote, censorship issue, because he doesn't go into media, and I get it. You can't go to 10 o'clock on MSNBC, but I'm pretty sure that Stephanie Ruhle would interview at 11 o'clock, and that he could go talk to a lot of journalists that actually speak to a heavily Democratic audience. And the thing is, when you testify, you are a Republican witness, and then you go, and I think Martha did a great job, but you go and you are with Martha McCallum, and then on Tuesday night, he'll be in a town hall with Sean Hannity. And I think Sean does a great job, and Gavin Newsom was very smart to go on with him. But if you are talking to the Democratic base, that's not who's watching Hannity. And we can all admit, I would hope
Has CNN invited him to do a town hall?
Is it his fault?
I mean, more Democrats watch Fox than any other network.
What I don't understand is, wait. There's a contradiction here. When he's not on, you said, why doesn't he do it? And then when he's on, how dare you platform him?
No, I never
that's
said how
Democrats
dare
are, you can't platform him. That's why he's on Fox.
No,
we will platform anyone. I'm the evidence of that.
100% yes to that. We finally agree on something. But I would find it really hard to believe that there wasn't one journalist on another network that wouldn't take him. And he did do a News Nation town hall.
But you know what? None of us know what we're talking about as to whether one person invited him or one person didn't. Here's the bottom line.
What do you think the odds are?
The Democrats want to shut him down, and they don't want him to speak. They want to deplatform him, and they want to censor him. And that's what they want to do with Robert Kennedy. I don't understand why they're so offended by this guy.
They're offended by him the same reason his JFK's grandson.
He said he's vaxxed. His kids are vaxxed. It's about COVID.
And he has been.
He's not always anti-vax. They had Democrats with a ridiculous new claim that investigating the Bidens, here's another one, is dangerous.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.